Welcome to the Love and Adventure. I'm Pastor Evans. She's Mrs. Evans. Today we're doing 3 pieces of marriage advice that we're glad that we took seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So what you got first, wife?
So my first piece of advice that I'm glad that I kept is have your own account. And the reason why I think that this is very important, and I'm glad that I received this piece of information, is because in managing the finances of a household, when there are 2 adults, it's always a good idea to have a house account or account where you an account that you use to pay bills and groceries, but it's also a good idea to have an account in which you can buy personal items for yourself or gifts for your spouse, and that should be your separate account, so that you can surprise your spouse if you so choose, or you just want to buy the new lipstick without having to explain why you spent $36 on the lipstick.
Right. Yeah, so we definitely have a joint account that we kind of work through. We budget from all the time. But then, having those separate accounts makes it easier to buy presents and just buy frivolous stuff without affecting the household.
Right.
So, I'm glad we took that one.
And it also minimizes arguments, because with 2 adults in the home, maybe both are working, maybe one is one is carrying maybe the heavier load, or they feel like they are. Sometimes if you're saving for something, or if someone sees a charge or a debit and they don't understand it, they may come home irritated or bothered that you didn't have a conversation about that. And with a separate account, you can alleviate all of that.
Right. Yeah, and in no way separates the money and separates that thing. It's just that little extra bit of money.
Yeah, because it's an agreed upon amount that you put into that account each month, or however often you choose. And one person can save, one person can splurge. It doesn't matter. It's really up to them.
Awesome. All right. So my first piece of advice is love your wife how she is, or as she is. And that gives you an opportunity to accept her and grow with her. Now, we've been married almost 21 years. We've been married over 20. And the woman I'm with now is not the one that I married, because she grew and she matured, and we grew together. So the way that she is today, I love her, and I loved her the way that she was when we got married. So not trying to change her, not try to make her be something that she's not, not trying to expect her to do something that I want her to do just because I want her to do it, but love her for who she is. Yep. What's your next one?
Okay. Yep. So the second piece of advice that I took seriously was that it's important to remember to kiss your husband every day.
Yes, it is.
And I was amazed a few years back when we went to a marriage conference.
Yeah.
And there was a question on how many times a day do you and your spouse kiss. And I was surprised, because it was like 600 times for me and my husband. We kiss all the time when we're around each other. I feel like it's an important love language, which is my husband's love language. I think it's, even if it's not your spouse's love language, it is a part of intimacy that is very important for all married couples. And the answer to the question at the marriage conference was most people in that room didn't kiss each other during the day when they were around each other, or they only kissed each other in the morning when they parted to go their separate ways. And I thought that was strange.
Yeah.
Like I said, because me and my husband, we do try to embrace and share that type of intimacy, because a lot of times that may be the only type of intimacy, especially in a busy household with kids and life. And so it's important that you find time to share those types of good touches.
Yeah, I was shocked that most people kiss like once a day or something like that. But I know for us it's been really important to kiss before we leave each other, if I'm leaving home or if you're leaving home, because quite frankly, you don't know if you're coming back. And we don't want to have the last thing be us not having embraced or us not having shown love or shown affection for each other. It would be difficult to live with that if we didn't see each other again. I know it's kind of heavy, but it's the reality that you live in and you don't know. So yes, I like the kisses.
Right.
Right.
So my last piece of advice.
Wait, I didn't do my second one.
Oh, sorry.
Try to take over. So my second one is something that I actually got from my father a long time ago.
Okay.
His quote to me was, if more than 2 people know what's going on in your relationship, that's too many people. And so my second piece of advice is, your marriage is your business. Right? Now, you may need to talk with someone about general stuff. And I think that's okay. But going to your mom or to your sister or to your friend or to your brother and complaining about what's going on and telling everybody your business doesn't necessarily help your marriage.
Right.
If you have an issue, yeah, go ahead.
Especially if they have a relationship with this person. Right. Then a good amount of the time, they start to see that person or your spouse in a different light. Right.
And that's not what you want. So if there's an issue in your marriage, talk with your spouse about it. Now, we've talked about before, you may not be in the time to talk about it. You might have to pick the right time, and don't force a conversation when it's not a good time to have it. Right. But sharing information outside of your marriage is not going to be a good idea most times.
Right. And we're by no means saying don't go get couples therapy. Right. Or don't go seek spiritual guidance. Right. If you so choose or decide that you need it. Right. I believe what we're saying here is that every argument, every disagreement doesn't have to go through the phone to an outside party who in turn could begin to act differently with your spouse as a result of something that you shared. Yeah. Yeah. So that's my second piece of advice. Your marriage, your business. Right. The final piece of advice that I would like to share with you all today is very important to me. And someone told me this just in passing. But what they shared with me was that my husband chose me. And I think that's a really good piece of advice because once you get married and life starts to get busy and you start to really feel this thing called marriage, because I know, at least for me, the day after we got married, I didn't feel married. I was like, when do I start feeling married? Right. And so once you start feeling married, then some of those insecurities might creep back in. Some of the things that maybe you don't necessarily have a good relationship with your family or his family, and they may say snide comments, and then you start doubting why you're with your spouse or why your spouse is with you. And it's important to remember that your spouse chose you, your husband chose you, your wife chose you, and you're amazing just the way that you are. And that's really important to know, understand, and believe, especially when you're in the beginning stages of your marriage, because these things can creep in and begin to create issues that you wouldn't normally have. And so remember, he chose you. That's a good one. Yeah. You chose me. So my last piece of advice, because we're only doing 3, is do what works for your marriage. I'm going to say it again. Do what works for your marriage. Don't look at other people's marriages and think, that's what we should do. Right. Right? And in the last one of these, we talked about the fact that I'm not very good at managing money. So me managing the money wasn't going to work for our marriage. Right? So we did what works for us. So your marriage is your own unique entity, your own life that you guys have to work out together. You can't take the template from someone else's marriage and move it to yours, right? Things like gender roles, supposedly gender roles as far as cooking and cleaning and doing those things, you can throw that stuff out the window. Right. And make sure you're doing what's good and what's positive for you and your spouse. Right. So do what works for your marriage. There may be some things in your marriage that looks completely different, especially from your parents' marriage. Right. Right. So if you had good marriages that you looked at and you saw when you were growing up, or if you had terrible ones, you have to do what works
for you.
And especially, we have to be careful about the people that we admire, we look up to, and we see their marriage and their relationship as something to aspire to. And I'm not saying that it's not. What I am saying is that you don't know what happens when the door closes.
Right.
And so you might find out that it ain't all it's cut up to be.
Right. Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you added that, because you don't know what goes on in anybody else's marriage.
Right.
All you see is the part they let you see.
Right.
And all the world will see is the part that you let them see about yours. So do what works for your marriage.
Yep. And so that's it.
That's all.
That's all for this time.
3 things.
3 things that I'm glad that I took seriously. 3 pieces of advice.
Right, 3 pieces of advice.
3 pieces of advice that I'm glad I took seriously.
Very good. So, if you have some advice that you are glad you took seriously, you can leave that in the comments.
Or if you had some advice that someone gave you, or that you heard someone else giving someone else, you can leave that in the comment box.
Or, even better, share it with somebody. And they can take it.
That would be good.
Or leave it. But let's grow our relationships together.
Yeah.
Right? Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell so you'll know when our next episode is released. And with that said, see you next time.